This is what I need you to hear. You're not lazy, you're not broken. The system was built this way. You see, everywhere you look, someone's like telling you to eat less and move more. And to be honest, most people already know that. But if we know it, why isn't it working? Think about it. Look at the UK back in the day, like several decades ago. Working class people were slimmer, they were fitter, diabetes, obesity, those were all rare. You see, most people didn't track calories back then. They didn't have protein shakes, and they definitely weren't doing high intensity workouts in the living rooms. So here's a question that I've been thinking about that I've got for you. If these are the same people, what has actually changed? So I want to break down how policy, how economics and power have completely reshaped your health, often without you realizing. Let's break down how Britain's food system was designed. So after World War II, the UK had one goal: no more hunger. The 1947 Agriculture Act, it changed everything. It guaranteed that farmers had a fixed price for their crops, so even if markets crash, they'd still get paid. So what does that mean in practice? Well, it meant that there was a huge push for yield. Crops like wheat, barley and potatoes, these flooded the system. The government wasn't thinking about nutrition. You see, they were thinking about volume. And that made sense, at that particular time. But over time, something else started to happen. You see, we stopped growing a variety of food and started focusing on the foods that got the biggest government payouts. I mean, it makes sense. If you put yourself in the farmer's shoes and at that time, you'd probably do exactly the same. So it became something like quantity over quality. That was the trade-off. In 1973, the UK joined the European Economic Community, and with it, a system called the Common Agricultural Policy, or CAP. You see, CAP was meant to keep food prices stable across the whole of Europe, but it had one major consequence. It massively subsidized a handful of crops, especially wheat, maize, corn, sugar, beet, and our oil seeds. Now, these are the building blocks of ultra-processed food, so I hope you're kind of linking the dots together. Think high fructose corn syrup, refined flour, seed oils, table sugar. This is all what goes into processed foods, ultra-processed foods. These are cheap to grow, they're cheap to store, and they're cheap to sell. So what all this meant was that the food industry could now make more money by turning those ingredients into thousands of shelf-ready products. So think about things like crisps, your biscuits, soft drinks, ready meals. Now these exploded in the 80s and the 90s. And by the 2000s, more than half of the UK's daily calories came from ultra-processed foods. So we essentially built a system here where junk food became the default. Moving forward, when you think about this, when the UK left the EU in 2020, we had a chance to rethink everything. You see, no more CAP, no more EU control over what was subsidized. So what did we do with that freedom? Well, the government introduced a new scheme called ELMS, or the Environmental Land Management Scheme. This was meant to reward farmers for sustainability, things like healthy soil, biodiversity, and protected nature. But here's the issue. Implementation has been slow and many farmers are still relying on the old ways. Meanwhile, our supermarkets still demand the high yield, low cost crops. So the incentives haven't really shifted towards diverse, nutrient rich farming like legumes, fresh veg, herbs or fruit. And you probably see this in the shopping markets, which is why, these healthy foods are a lot more expensive than the ultra processed foods, because it's what the system was built at. I hope that makes sense when you think about the history and what has gone into the system. So for the average person in a cost of living crisis, that means that processed foods is going to be cheaper than health. So even though the policy changed, the system just didn't. Now, this is the part I really need you to hear. You're not lazy, you're not broken. The system was built this way. You see, when you're stressed, when you're tired and not have enough money, what's more accessible? A £1 pack of biscuits or a £3 bunch of blueberries? Our economy rewards cheap calories, not quality nutrition. And it's those foods that are linked to things like obesity, inflammation, diabetes, and poor metabolic health. So I talk about all of these conditions on this channel, but I thought it would be helpful to actually see why we're seeing all the changes and everything going on in our society today. So when people just say, eat better, move more, they're ignoring everything that's stacked against you. Now, I don't share all of this to make you feel stuck. I really don't want it to be the case. I'm telling you this because the first step to real change is just understanding the truth. You didn't fail, you were failed. But now we know and we can do something about it. So, like this video, subscribe if this opened your eyes, and share it with someone who needs to hear. Dr. Derek here. As always, I truly care about your health and I wish you the very best.